wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dewbs and Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
All too often, people will be sitting at home watching a press conference live, and they'll hear loads of questions being asked, and they'll be thinking, that's not my question. That's not my concern.
We don't care whose feathers we ruffle. We ask the questions that you want answering.
You're all standing on the street protesting and want to have an open discussion.
My name's Patrick Christie's. I do a show for GB News in the UK. Is it possible to talk to you quickly?
Journalism in this country has been a cosy world full of groupthink until now.
Well, this is the best view ever of Whitehall, looking out across all the tractor drivers of England who've come together to make their point.
Hello, so as you can see, I'm here in Westminster as the protest begins.
Yes, I'm very much in the thick of it.
Look, we're challenging narratives here at GB News, and that's what sets us apart.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs and Co. Well, oh well, it's all been going on, hasn't it, with the Epstein files? I can tell you right now, it is not looking good for Peter Mandelson. I have questions. Why was he not kicked out of the Labour Party? Should he still be a Lord? And some people even suggesting that, never even mind all of that, he should quite frankly be in prison. Goodness me, lots to discuss. And figures out today show that 1 in 3 people have avoided going to A&E in the last 2 years because of wait times. Are you one of them? But it's all right, though, because at least appointment times are coming down more generally in the NHS, right? Well, apparently, maybe not. Let's take a look at that. Also, as well, there's conversations now, pressure going on to Keir Starmer when it comes to whether or not asylum seekers should be placed in brand new council housing. Why was this even considered a good idea in the first place? All of that and lots more. Hopefully as well, Charlie Peters on the programme before the end. But for now, I've got the Head of Policy for Reform UK, Zia Youssef. Alongside him, I've got Labour councillor Stuart Fawcett. But before we get stuck in, let's give you your 6 o'clock news headlines.
Michelle, thank you, and good evening to you. The top story tonight at 6. Sir Keir Starmer says Lord Peter Mandelson should step down from the House of Lords. That as pressure is growing for a police investigation into his links with Jeffrey Epstein. Downing Street says the Prime Minister believes Mandelson should not hold a peerage, but lacks the power to remove it. He has now, though, ordered an urgent review into all contact between the former minister and Mr Epstein while in government. The move follows the release of millions of US Justice Department files which appear to show Mandelson shared sensitive internal government information with Epstein during the financial crisis and received payments totalling $75,000 while he was a Labour MP. Lord Mandelson denies wrongdoing, saying he has no recollection of the alleged payments and has quit the Labour Party to, in his words, avoid further embarrassment. Well, earlier, Cabinet Minister Darren Jones told the Commons the revelations raise serious concerns about Mandelson's conduct in office.
Peter Mandelson must account for his actions and conduct. It is an understatement to say that his decision to continue a close relationship with a convicted paedophile, including discussing private government business, falls far below the standards expected of any minister. His behaviour was unequivocally wrong and an insult to the women and girls who suffered. No government minister of any political party should have, nor ever should, behave in this way.
Also tonight, the mother of Rhiannon White says the government must be held accountable for her daughter's death after her killer was jailed for life. Rhiannon was murdered at a train station in Walsall, stabbed 23 times with a screwdriver by Deng Majek, an asylum seeker. Majek has been sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 29 years. Speaking to GB News earlier this morning, Siobhan White said her family will now campaign in Rhiannon's name, supporting other families and pushing for stronger protections for women and girls. And just a warning, this next clip does contain some distressing details.
There was absolutely no reason at all
No reason. As you've seen from the CCTV links, he literally just watched her for hours. There was no reason. They'd never even crossed words. We have sat quiet for 15 months for Rhiannon's sake, because I wanted justice. We're not a family that are going to go and kick off. What's the point? Because Rhiannon's not the first case, and sadly she won't be the last. But we were handed a life sentence today. I had to watch my daughter die.
Well, in response, the Home Office has released a statement. It says this vile criminal is behind bars where he belongs and has rightly received the strictest punishment, a life sentence. It added that it shares public anger, the Home Office that is, over what it called a broken asylum system, insisting it is taking action to keep dangerous offenders out of the country and close asylum hotels. The independent rape gang inquiry has formally opened in London today, with 2 weeks of public hearings now underway. The inquiry has been crowdfunded by Great Yarmouth MP Rupert Lowe and is expected to hear evidence from survivors, from campaigners, whistleblowers and public figures. Supporters say the process is designed to give victims a platform outside of the government-led structure amid long-standing concerns over accountability and delays. It comes as ministers are preparing a separate national inquiry chaired by Anne Longfield, which is due to run for 3 years with a budget of £65 million. And just before I hand you back to Michelle, breaking in the last few minutes or so, confirmation that resident doctors in England have again voted to continue industrial action for another 6 months, keeping pressure on the government over what they say is pay and conditions disputes. The British Medical Association confirming 93.4% of those who voted backed further strikes, but turnout, worth noting, was just over 52%, meaning roughly a third of all resident doctors are actively supporting that action. The government says doctors, though, have already had a nearly 29% pay rise over 3 years and insists talks are ongoing, with the Health Secretary Wes Streeting saying he wants to avoid disruption this year. The BMA says strikes are not inevitable, but is warning patience, they say, is running out. Those are the 6 o'clock headlines. I'll be back with you in an hour. Now, though, it's over to Michelle.
Thank you very much for that, Sam. And hello, good evening to each and every single one of you at home. How are you doing tonight? That last story there just pricked up. What do you think? I shall be discussing the NHS a little bit later on in the programme. Do you support those resident doctors? What do you think? Yet more strike action, yet more pay rises demanding. Are you still on their side or not? Get in touch, all the usual ways, of course, alongside me. My panel, Head of Policy for Reform UK, Zia Youssef, and alongside him, I've got the Labour councillor, Stuart Fawcett. I've missed talking to you over these last few days. So much seems to have been going on. If you're online, hop over, of course, to Your Say. You can email me as well or get me on social media. But look, I need to, of course, kick off with the absolute remarkable goings-on in the Epstein files. Do you follow the twists and the turns of all of this? One fella who absolutely is not coming out of this well, and that, ladies and gents, is me putting it mildly, is Peter Mandelson. Now, earlier on in the Commons, Darren Jones, he was speaking out about this. Let's just take a listen.
Peter Mandelson must account for his actions and conduct. It is an understatement, Madam Deputy Speaker, to say that his decision to continue a close relationship with a convicted paedophile, including discussing private government business, falls far below the standards expected of any minister. His behaviour was unequivocally wrong and an insult to the women and girls who suffered. The Prime Minister believes, as does the government, that Peter Mandelson should not retain his membership of the House of Lords or use his title.
Well, yeah, that's absolutely fascinating. But if the Labour Party feels so strongly, firstly, many people would actually argue, Stuart, the fella shouldn't have been in the role in the first place, but we are where we are. If the Labour Party feels so strongly, why didn't they kick him out? Why was it for him to decide, you know what, yeah, I'll leave of my own accord?
That's an important question to ask. They certainly didn't seem to waste any time in doing that, essentially, and it didn't really give the opportunity for that to be considered. But I think it's right what the Chief Secretary of the Prime Minister has said, that Peter Mandelson should not retain his seat in the House of Lords or indeed use his title. It's no longer appropriate. And it's a real smack in the face to the victims of these heinous crimes. I think there's also future questions to answer as well on what these documents have released. I haven't seen all of them. And questions should be asked about who knew what and when, essentially. We've already had this earlier on in the year, and I think it's right that we should be clear with the public exactly what was known and when.
I'll come back to you in a second, but Zia Youssef, your thoughts?
Well, this story with regards to Jeffrey Epstein and Peter Mandelson, I think is one of the most extraordinary political stories in my lifetime, aside from obviously the egregious and heinous criminal acts that Jeffrey Epstein committed himself. If you look at what's come out in the last 24 hours, and look, we're going through, as we speak, all of the stuff from the Justice Department, but it's clear that Peter Mandelson, and this is documented in emails that everybody can see online as we speak on the Justice Department in America's website. Number one, Peter Mandelson gave an early heads up to Jeffrey Epstein about Gordon Brown's resignation and gave an early heads up to Jeffrey Epstein of the 500 billion euro bailout of the euro. And those are obviously market-sensitive things to a man who, by the way, obviously managed an enormous amount of money, if we can call it that. So it is clear as day, I think. I think this is open and shut stuff. I think this is market manipulation. And also, those emails betray the fact that Mandelson shared with Epstein underground tunnels and things that are protected under the Official Secrets Act. This is, I personally think this is less a case of, you know, should Peter Mandelson be in the House of Lords? But frankly, how long will his jail sentence be? I think Peter Mandelson is going to jail. And here's the most important question. Here's the most important thing. Because you just saw Darren Jones from Labour talking about, oh, you know, Peter Mandelson's going to answer for all of this. Let's not forget, Keir Starmer himself appointed Peter Mandelson not that long ago to be Britain's ambassador to the United States of America. He did so in defiance of advice from the United Kingdom's intelligence agencies. I think Keir Starmer has a serious question to answer. And personally, I think Keir Starmer needs to resign.
What do you say about that, Stuart?
I mean, we have it's a very rare case that Britain appoints political appointees as ambassadors, and it's a different set of circumstances in which they are selected to that of career diplomats. And I think in that case, risks and you know, the upsides of appointing a political appointee are often considered. I'm not sure, I don't know the whole facts of the case about the particular security aspects about what the intelligence services said, but broadly speaking, I think this government has generally followed security services advice in most matters. So it'd be quite surprising to learn that they would have contravened it directly in this case.
Peter, one of my viewers, says, Michelle, every single person and the kitchen sink, it feels like, knew that Mandelson wasn't right for the UK ambassador role to the US. Are you telling me that the only person that didn't seem to know this was Keir Starmer? He says, pull the other one. We don't believe it for a second. It feels like a job for the boys. Lots of people getting in touch and saying, Paul, how on earth does anyone even thought that he was a suitable candidate for this role is absolutely mind-blowing. He says Peter Mandelson is a traitor and he should be treated as such. And again, he puts the blame squarely onto Keir Starmer. Tony, again, there is a question being asked here, Stuart. If so many people could sense that Peter Mandelson was not the right man for the job, and you will say, oh, I don't really know all the details, but, you know, he knew about, Keir Starmer will have known about his links to Epstein and all the rest of it that continued way beyond the accusations and the guilt of him doing wrong with younger girls and all the rest of it. The question will be, perhaps, on the minds of some of these viewers, what did Peter Mandelson potentially have over either Keir Starmer or senior members within the Labour Party to have swung this appointment in his general direction?
I think there was a risk-benefit analysis that went on about Peter Mandelson's ability to improve diplomatic and trade relations with the United States and the information that was at hand during his appointment. And let's not forget, we did actually manage to sign an overdue trade deal with the United States, which had had not happened, and that's often the purpose of political appointments. So there's the case of his competency and his ability in a political role, and also that parallel of his character, and as you say, the outline of these allegations that have been arising that we now have evidence of. Now they're in the public domain, but we didn't before, essentially. So that's the sort of how things have explained. However, I do understand people's frustration with this, given that, broadly speaking, this government has been reasonably risk-averse in its appointment of certain personnel, and ordinarily this wouldn't have been the norm for its decision-making processes.
It just seems very odd. Something just doesn't seem to stack up on this one. Philip is asking, is Keir Starmer just incompetent?
I don't think incompetence in this particular case is necessarily the first finger that I would point. I would look at the accuracy of the information that he's perhaps made his decision on, and obviously a lot more new information has now come to light. But when it has come to light, it has been acted upon pretty swiftly. And I think the Prime Minister's position is quite clear that Peter Mandelson should no longer retain his seat in the House of Lords. He was removed as the ambassador.
Yeah, but he's playing catch-up, Stuart. Let's not beat around the bush. All this stuff started coming out on Friday. We've already known some of this stuff. I mean, it seems like every day becomes more and more eye-watering. He should have been pushed from your party, and he wasn't. And for many people, that's inexcusable. You don't want to what?
I wouldn't want to share a party with someone who has been made allegations of with Peter Mandelson, and I'm pleased that he no longer shares the party I do, given the fact the information.
I know, but that's because he chose to leave. So my question to you that I'm putting is, there's obviously something wrong here. Why didn't your party kick him out? Your party appears weak. Your party appears that what you're trying to do now is get in front of the criticism and go, oh, yeah, we're really tough. Look at us. We're saying he shouldn't still have his peerage.
And it's really tested the robustness of the processes of political parties in this particular case, especially for someone who's held such a high position in the Labour Party. And I think there's a serious lesson to be learned here.
Well, hold on. Keir Starmer, this is widely reported. Keir Starmer appointed Peter Mandelson as Britain's ambassador to the United States of America in defiance of advice from our intelligence agencies. That's just my opinion. It's widely reported among many reputable news outlets. And why was that? Well, now we're seeing the reason why. Not only did he continue a close friendship with somebody after it was clear that he was a paedophile, now, as a result of revelations in the last 24 hours and emails we can all see, he was engaging in giving Jeffrey Epstein information about Gordon Brown's resignation before the public knew about it, and ahead of a euro bailout that moved currencies across the globe before the public knew about it. If you believe that the buck stops with the executive, I cannot see how you cannot be calling for the leader of your party to resign today.
I just want to separate a few things out here for clarity, which was, if that was reported that the intelligence services had made that recommendation, it is a recommendation. It's for ministers, even the Prime Minister, to decide.
Correct.
As a risk-benefit analysis. And I'm reasonably...
you're agreeing it was Starmer's decision?
I'm reasonably confident in saying neither you nor I know if that decision was taken by the intelligence services, their assessment. We don't know what that was based upon, the information they have. It could or could not have been related to information that has been released in the Epstein files, but you and I don't know that for a fact, because that is under their jurisdiction, not in the public domain. What has now come into the public domain is the Epstein files, but we could only surmise, and we could be very wrong to assume that those two pieces of information were the same thing.
His nickname was literally the Prince of Darkness. That's been his nickname for years, as long as I can remember. If you were interviewing for a candidate in your office and you found out that his nickname or her nickname was the Prince or Princess of Darkness, what would your reaction be?
I'd always be careful about making assumptions on other people's reputation.
This is in the public domain. Everybody had seen his conduct. And again, do you or do you not believe in the buck stopping with the executive? Do you think leaders should take responsibility for their actions?
I think leaders make a lot of decisions in government at the top. And whilst I understand where you're trying to take this conversations here, my outlook at the moment is
this
the
is one of the
information
most
that we have now.
political scandals of my lifetime. So yes,
I think what Peter Mandelson has been involved in
and what he did.
I think what he's been involved in is heinous. You know, I think you can tell sitting here today the way I feel about this. The victims of Jeffrey Epstein's crimes, it's just unspeakable what they've been put through, and his association, Peter Mandelson's association with Mr. Epstein is particularly awful. However, we are only just finding out about this information.
OK, so let me ask you this question.
Today.
If it was clear to you that the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, the leader of your party, did know about Peter Mandelson's connections with Jeffrey Epstein, to the degree we understand now, and he still appointed him as ambassador to America, you would call on Starmer to resign?
Hold upon. I think we need to. I would very clearly want to know if the Prime Minister knew that, but I would want to know what he knew and when, and who his advice was.
And if he did, you'd call on him.
I'd want to know the source of the advice.
Simple yes or no question.
No, it's not a simple yes or no question.
It really is. If he did know about those things, would you call on him to resign?
The most important information is about when they knew it, where, and the timing, because information becomes particularly useful as it comes in. We've only just got this today. I don't know what they knew and when, and I would want to satisfy that before answering that question.
Well, there you go. You will have strong opinions on that. Keep them coming in all the usual ways. Would you go to A&E? Would you be too worried about the wait times? And what do you think when it comes to the actual appointment wait times more broadly in the NHS? Are you waiting for something? How are you getting on? We'll discuss all of that after the break.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dewbs, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, DC.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Dewbs & Co. with me, Zia Youssef. I'm calling myself Zia Youssef. With me, Michelle Dewberry, Zia Youssef and Stuart Fawcett. Welcome back, everybody. I want to talk to you now about the NHS. Lots of you are getting in touch now. One of my viewers has just said, Michelle, I was due a 3-month appointment 10 months ago, and I am still waiting for it to happen. Tracy says, my husband has just had a cancellation appointment letter from the NHS, and now they've told him they don't know when they can actually see him. So we haven't yet got another date. And Michelle, this is following a hospital admission last August, she says. I'll come on to those general appointments in just a second, but today a poll revealed, get this, that 1 in 3 of us, I'm astonished actually that it's not more. Apparently we're avoiding going to A&E because we're absolutely terrified about the extended wait times. Now, let me just cover A&E first, and then I'm going to get on to, because all is not what it seems when it comes to more general appointments. But Zia Youssef, your thoughts?
Well, it is a tragic and shameful fact that 19,000 people, Michelle, in this country waited more than 3 days in accident and emergency last year. Just imagine what that would be like, right? Firstly, having to go to accident and emergency, an extremely traumatic event, and then having to wait more than 3 days for treatment. That is, frankly, a third world statistic, totally unbecoming of a country like the United Kingdom. And it is a simple fact that we've had a population explosion in this country that has placed the NHS, frankly, on the brink of collapse.
Absolutely disgusting. What do you think to the A&E situation?
I want to know if, when Reform privatised the NHS, if that's going to address
well,
that.
Hold on. Where's that come from? You just completely made that up.
I just want to know that because I understand your leader wanted an insurance-based system. Is that not right?
No, that's absolutely not true.
So how do you intend to address this 3-day wait for 19,000 people?
Well, how about, number one, stopping the population explosion? In this country, the British taxpayer is spending 50% more per person in real terms than they did 2 decades ago, and yet every possible outcome is getting worse. We're seeing insane amounts of NHS health tourism. The government, the Tories were as bad at this as anyone, but Labour are just as bad.
In your party
They're
now.
simply not disclosing any data around health tourism, so we don't even know how much foreign nationals are costing the NHS as we speak. Yes, we need more hospitals, we need more GPs, but we also need to prioritise British citizens and stop allowing basically people coming from foreign countries into this country with the express intention of taking advantage of our NHS, which is
net
exactly
migration
what they do.
now for legal migration is at an all-time low, yet we're still facing these issues in the health service.
Well, that's because the population has grown much faster than NHS capacity has been able to grow.
To sheerly point this as an immigration issue, I don't think is particularly effective. What we have...
It's not about whether it's effective, it's whether it's true. And
what we have is a situation where we have a higher demand on the NHS at the moment.
Why do we have higher demand?
Because people want to live healthier lifestyles. We have free at the point of need health
People are
care.
going to the NHS
and we
because
have
they're
more
sick,
more
not
British.
because they're trying to live healthier lifestyles.
No,
it's because they're literally sick.
Yes, but people can actually... We have medical science now that can address a lot more in terms of what you can go and get access in the NHS for, more than ever. The conversation we should be having is, what can the NHS reasonably cater for people? We initially started the NHS 80 years ago, free at the point of need, and there was a lot of emergency medicine in there, OK? People now require a lot more outpatient care. We have a lot more GPs servicing people, but I reject the notion that it's solely population explosion. We have a growing population. We also have an ageing population in this country, which puts a disproportionate strain on healthcare, specifically in certain areas because of occupational health. So I reject the notion it's solely because of immigration and population explosion. I don't see the evidence pointing to that. When we talk about things like NHS emergency care, you know, we have things like winter strain, it's seasonal, there are certain other things, outpatient care putting strain on, elective surgery. All of these are new emerging elements of NHS care that we haven't experienced in any number before, but we are providing them.
Yeah, OK, so nobody said solely as a result of immigration and population explosion, but that's a key factor. I said it's a massive factor. Let's look at the numbers. The Tory government, over the 14 years, the Tory government imported 12 million people gross and around 6.5 million people net into this country over those 14 years, and they left the country with fewer hospital beds. Fewer hospital beds. I can draw a straight line between those statistics and the fact that 19,000 British people, tragically and shamedly to all of us in this country, frankly, had to wait more than 3 days for treatment in accident and emergency. But there is no evidence that Labour is building more hospital beds. And as we're probably going to come on later in the show, in fact, what they're doing is gaslighting the British people, boasting about wait lists coming down for every possible reason other than people actually getting the treatment that they need.
Let me just add some detail to what Zia is talking about there. So we're all told all the time that the NHS is getting better, that the waiting lists are decreasing and so on and so forth. But something was revealed today that the most recent claim, for example, that the waiting lists were down by more than 86,000, which is, quote, the largest fall in a month for over 2 years. Well, yeah, but guess what that is? It's not you lot getting rattled through all of your appointments quicker and sitting there with your feet up saying that you feel better. No, it's trusts now paying £3 million to basically what they call validate their waiting list. So go right through the list. Has anyone died? Does anyone not need their services anymore? Probably because you've given up the ghost and sacked it off and gone private or something like that. So that's how those figures seem to be coming down, not by you guys being seen quicker after all. What do you say to that?
I mean, we now process a lot of data. I mean, on this show, when Zia and I sit here, you'll hear a lot of figures, percentages, polls, opinions, and there are a lot of, often, when it comes to money, a lot of big figures. And that's because there's a lot of data there. And in order to process data like this, organisations need to process it correctly, validate it, and see what's effective. So in these certain circumstances, they've gone through these lists and said, OK, these people are no longer pursuing treatment. Oh, these people have died, often not because of a connected situation, and they've actually streamlined, because prior to this, that data hasn't been being processed effectively. So by processing data more effectively, you make the health service more efficient, and therefore being able to service the patients that need it most.
And that's
what's happened.
And that's fine. So if you guys came out and said, guys, guess what? We're data genius. We're sorting out the data. That's brilliant. But that's not what you're doing. What you're saying is, guess what? We've had the largest fall in a month for over 2 years. These are not just numbers. It is thousands of people getting the care they need, end quote. So actually, that's absolute nonsense. It's not thousands of people getting the care.
Nonsense. Because if
you don't think that's nonsense?
No, if you have a list of 100 people,
yeah,
and you have someone in like 65th place, for example,
yeah,
but you've realised that several people before on the list are no longer needing care, and you've identified that, you can move people up the list, and that's the purpose of actually processing that data. So people will have actually benefited from that because they've been able to actually make the lists as accurate as they should be. People aren't waiting behind people who no longer need the treatment, so it's fast-tracked it.
I think that's quite a lot of manipulation and massaging of the data, but you guys will be the final judge of that. Zia, sorry.
Well, look, Keir Starmer and Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, have been boasting about wait lists coming down, and that 80,000 number, the highest level in a single month inside 2 years. Let's look at the actual facts. Let's look at the facts. So what has happened is, and excellent reporting, to be fair, to the Times, who stated that in that month, 340,000 people were removed from waiting lists as a result of an exercise called, quote, validation. That is where the government literally pays hospital trusts to remove people from waiting lists for reasons including that they've tragically passed away, or the NHS has deemed them no longer needing such treatment. That is 80,000 more, and this is where it gets really ridiculous, 80,000 more than the prior month. That is that exact 80,000 that Keir Starmer has been boasting about, and he's literally on his Twitter about how much the waiting lists came down. So the state of the NHS is so desperate now that the Prime Minister of this country, Keir Starmer, is boasting about wait lists coming down because British people have been waiting on waiting lists so long that they've tragically passed away.
But we don't always know that those things are connected.
Here's the even worse statistic, that hospitals in this country actually performed fewer operations, right, and fewer procedures and appointments, 10% fewer than the prior month. 10% fewer. So this is literally pure gaslighting. It's nothing to do with actually a better functioning NHS, which is why the 7 million people in England, 9 million people in total in the United Kingdom who are on elective waiting lists, including a lot of people watching this show, no doubt, Michelle, who are saying, as we just heard, I'm not seeing any evidence that I'm getting any better treatment for the NHS or wait lists coming down.
I just want to
so it is
clarify
actually
what you're saying
not
here, Zia.
extraordinarily
You just made a
dishonest
claim here.
and gaslighting to tell the British people wait lists are coming down. When really the reason they're coming down is because tragically British people are dying.
And procedures. That is not always a consistent number across 12 months of any particular year at all. And you've said that the government have gaslighted people and have very clearly explained here, as you have said, some people on those waiting lists have sadly passed away, but that is not always connected to the reason why they're on that waiting list, waiting for that particular procedure, operation, treatment, whatever it is. The government has asked NHS trusts, who are organisations who are paid by the government to run things, and they've said, you need to do this to make your services more efficient. We will pay you to cover the cost of this service. That has made their services more efficient. That is why you're seeing this data.
I find it absolutely tragic because, of course, we're all the victims of this. Anyone that needs healthcare on the NHS, you are the ones that are affected. I've got so many stories coming in about loved ones being taken off waiting lists, but you've still not received the treatment. But yet still, I find it fascinating. I think we can all agree that the NHS is broken. But heaven forbid anyone even tries to have a conversation about tweaking the NHS or changing the different models within the NHS, because for whatever reason, and perhaps you can indulge me and tell me why, we apparently have to worship at the altar of the NHS. It's like some kind of strange religion. But it's not working, is it? So tell me what we do then if we're not allowed radical reform to it. Anyway, I want to talk to you after the break about housing. Why on earth are asylum seekers being considered the front of the queue for new build housing? See you in a minute.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
The current unsettled weather is extending to many other areas of Europe as well, particularly parts of Portugal and southern Spain, seeing some very persistent rain at the moment, some localised flooding around here. Showers that are pushing across the continent are also bringing mountain snow over the Alps, but whilst eastern areas of the Mediterranean get a brief respite on Tuesday, we are expecting further thunderstorms and heavy showers to move through here later on in the week, so still rather wet for many.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Evening. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Rain is returning to southwest England and more wet weather to come across the northeast as well, with some snow mixed in here. Most places feeling a bit colder tomorrow compared to today. Low pressure systems continue to grow down to the southwest, being blocked from moving by a big area of high pressure. So the weather's kind of stuck in this rut. A further pulse of rain coming into the southwest, where the ground is very, very wet. So extra rain is likely to cause some flooding problems, even though it's not particularly heavy. Staying wet in northeast Scotland as well, and the snow level coming down here. Most places avoiding frost with a lot of cloud and a fairly brisk wind, which will bring a real chill tomorrow. As the air gets colder, that snow coming down to lower levels over eastern Scotland, maybe rain on the coast, but you won't have to come too far to see some snow. The rain easing perhaps in Cornwall, but more wet weather to come for Dorset, Somerset and Devon. Met Office warning remains in place here. That rain extending across Wales, but Northern Ireland, much of Northern England's dry and drab. Some brightness in western Scotland, but the snow warning in place across the northeast. To say that snow coming down increasingly to lower and lower levels. So we may see rain on the coast, but the snow elsewhere could cause some disruption as it builds up through the day, particularly, but not exclusively, on the higher routes. The rain will edge northwards, covering the Midlands, East Anglia by the time we get into the afternoon, and most of Wales. Cold day with that rain over the Midlands and East Anglia, 4 or 5 degrees with that wind continuing to feed in the cloud. And as things turn colder, the wet weather moves northwards. We'll see a bit more snow on Wednesday. Again, mostly over the hills, but some at lower levels possible for a time over northern England and Scotland. Warning in place for Shetland through Wednesday as well. Elsewhere further south, looks a bit brighter across southern parts of England and Wales on Wednesday, and a bit milder here as well, but further north, staying on the chilly side throughout.
Thank you, Britain, for the thousands of you who are becoming friends of GB News every week.
You're not only watching and listening to our programmes, you're becoming part of them too.
Good evening. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. On the M74 southbound, the junction 6 off slip to Hamilton is closed for essential roadworks. Drivers should anticipate congestion, which is also building on the M4 eastbound at junction 32 Corriton, with the off-slip affected. In Durham, the A66 westbound between the A1M and the A67 has been shut after a crash, with reopening expected at 1:15 to midnight tonight. And on the trains, Cross Country and South Western Railway report major disruption between Southampton Central and Brockenhurst, plus delays between York and North Allerton. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry's here, Youssef and Stuart Fawcett. I've got to tell you, absolute awful stories that many of you are getting in touch with. Hillary says, Michelle, I needed to go to A&E last year, but I didn't dare because I was too afraid to be waiting for hours. It turns out, she says, that I was actually having a stroke. Victoria says, I had to take my partner to A&E with a suspected stroke because he's had one previously. We arrived at 4 p.m. By 7 p.m. it was confirmed he'd had a stroke and that a bed was available. But we then didn't get admitted to a ward until 4 a.m. the next day. Kevin was there with broken ribs for 13.5 hours. Absolutely awful. So many of you getting in touch as well, telling me about just how many appointments you've had cancelled as well. If you take out private medical insurance, that I know that many of you are having to now, I think you should actually get some kind of rebate in your national insurance contributions. Why should you have to be forced to pay twice just to get general health care in this country? Do tell me why. Anyway, many of you won't be able to get onto the housing ladder. Some of you will be on the housing waiting list, perhaps. Get this. There's a Labour Party scheme now to give asylum seekers the first opportunity to live in brand newly built council houses. Lots of people are absolutely furious about this. 200 local authorities have registered an interest. Yeah, I bet they have. Zia Youssef, what do you think?
Well, this is absolutely disgusting. And the fact that Labour are now talking to local councils about erecting new build properties with the express intention of housing people who turned up on our beaches uninvited and illegally. And by the way, of those 200 councils who have expressed interest in this programme, to be fair to those councils, they're not the ones responsible for protecting our borders and preventing people turning up here illegally and freeloading on people watching this programme. Those councils disproportionately index for councils where British veterans are more likely to be homeless, Michelle. This is an utterly disgusting story. We need to secure our borders, stop the boats, stop people coming here illegally, and send people who came to this country illegally back to the countries from which they came, not give them free accommodation at the expense of British taxpayers.
Stuart?
I mean, Number 10 has said expressly that this is not, there's no truth in this, that illegal immigrants are not going to be prioritised for brand new council homes at all. The Home Office is clear that they were moving away from the hotels policy, of which Robert Jenrick put in place, a new member of Reform, under the previous Conservative government, and we're moving away from that in order to get more cost-effective accommodation while asylum claims are actually being processed in order to facilitate returns. And that includes, by the way, the renegotiation of Article 3 and 8, which is of the ECHR. So that's now happening. The reason why this is happening, and speaking as the local councillor, is because councils often have a responsibility to house people wherever they are, regardless of their immigration status. And the Home Office has taken a consideration of this and saying, if we're paying lots of money to hotels, what's a better investment? We need to do this. We have a legal responsibility to house people whilst their asylum claims are being processed in order to remove the ones who don't have a legitimate reason to be here. What's a better investment of our money? OK, well, if councils are having to house these people in a certain area, which is their legal responsibility, we could see this as an investment, revamp homes that can then be used afterwards once these people have moved out, essentially.
Hold on, so you, at the beginning of that entire word salad, you said the story wasn't true, and at the end you basically defended the thing that wasn't
very
true.
Clear. Illegal immigrants are not being prioritised for brand new council homes. Councils, often like mine, have a lot of old stock which needs refurbishing, which for cash flow regions, something called the housing revenue account, perhaps not very familiar with it here, but as a councillor I am, that means the cash flow that you have, which is paid in order to keep stock in a usable situation. So the Home Office is taking a view that there can be an investment made here into local communities, that for a short term we can house these legal immigrants whilst they're actually being processed once risk assessments have taken place, and the local area actually gets something out of that, which is housing stock that it wouldn't have ordinarily had, which is better money than being spent on large-scale hotel policies, as Robert Jenrick had done, now a member of your party, under the previous Conservative government.
So firstly, I am aware of that programme. I spent a lot of time with local councils, especially, obviously, reform councils. But again, let me just bring this to you. So Graham Stringer, Labour MP for Blackley and Middleton South, said that plans to house asylum seekers in new councils' homes are, quote, unacceptable. So is he saying that something that isn't true is unacceptable?
Just to clarify here, councils sometimes buy new stock of council homes, so brand new houses, often from housing developers. It's an efficient way of doing it. The government, and I agree with Mr. Stringer, to say it is not appropriate to buy new houses to put illegal immigrants in.
But that is what is currently being
What I have just explained very clearly is
why 200
councils have a lot of old stock,
programme.
and the money is better invested refurbishing that old stock for a short-term housing solution for immigrants that can be used again for families that we wouldn't have ordinarily had that stock for.
Many of my viewers will be shouting at their television and their radio, screaming, in fact, why aren't you refurbishing these properties for our benefit? Why is it always everything being refurbished, whether it was a Bibi Stockholm, which is fine for British people, but apparently not for asylum seekers, whether it's these military bases that all need to apparently be refurbished, but apparently they're fine for British people, and now these houses that all apparently now need to be refurbished. I can hear you. Don't you worry about that.
Can I just address that, Michelle?
No, you can't. What? Because
you've just said something about veterans as well that Zia mentioned on.
Well, you need to hurry up.
But we do now have Op Valor, which is directly giving funding over £50 million in some areas to homeless veterans, in areas such as mine where we have that.
£50 million?
No, this country is spending £3.5 billion a year on accommodating people who turned up on our beaches uninvited and illegally. So I'm afraid that is an insult to our British veterans.
But there has been no similar programme before that is invested regionally using local government.
Well, let's divert that £3.5 billion currently being spent on illegal migrants to our veterans.
Well, I can tell you what, as well, many of you telling me about getting appointments cancelled and all the rest of it. Some of you're probably considering getting on these not so small boats and getting in front of the queue for the healthcare in this country as well. I can hear you. Don't worry about that. Look, I want to talk to you after the break. I want to talk about the independent grooming gang inquiry that's been kicked off today. I'll see you in a sec. I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co with you.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here. GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device, and as long as you have an internet connection. Tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Bold.
They are under no illusion.
Ray, are you a human trafficker? Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get this on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
5 hosts. 5 opinions. 5 fearless debates. 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What did she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace to Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Dewbs and Kerr. Me, Michelle Dewberry, Zia Youssef and Stuart Fawcett. Now, many of you are incredibly passionate about the topic of grooming gangs, of course, as a channel. So are we. Well, the independent rape gang inquiry opened today. Without further ado, let me cross to our national reporter, Charlie Peters. Tell us more.
Well, Michelle, this is a significant moment because Rupert Lowe promised this inquiry a year ago, raised hundreds of thousands of pounds in donations, and unlike many politicians, you might say, he has very much put his money forward and stead up to that commitment he made last year. 2 weeks of hearings now set to come forward. And I think while we're all waiting for that government inquiry, which should launch later this year, we'll get the confirmed terms of reference from Baroness Longfield in March. This inquiry could prove very helpful in helping to direct that government inquiry by releasing information previously unknown, by providing potentially new lines of inquiry, and also for giving a voice to some survivors who are speaking out through this inquiry for the first time. Michelle, I think that this new inquiry that we're going to have through the government launching in March, it's going to have a lot of localised targeting. It's not going to be like many other public inquiries we've seen before. It will choose different areas to review. We know that Oldham will be the first one after we revealed last year the government had rejected a request for a government-led investigation. Bradford highly likely to be the other. But then where it comes and where else they might look, I think something like this inquiry being launched by Rupert Lowe could help to secure future locations if there is a significant number of survivors speaking out in one particular area. I'm also hopeful, Michelle, that it might cast more light on the links between ethnicity, religion and culture that played a role not just in the cover-up of these abuse scandal crises, but also in how they started, the motivations behind some of the offending and how the men worked together. With that more information, I think that this inquiry could essentially play a role to pressure the government to look at new areas and new themes to give more focus to the survivors who want, finally, a proper government investigation to get the justice they've been denied for decades.
Interesting stuff. Charlie Peters, thank you very much for that. And of course, we shall follow that investigation with interest. It's pretty damn shameful that this government needs pressure applying to it to try and truthfully get to the bottom of what's happened with these girls, is it not?
I think the fact that there's been £65 million put aside in order to actually have a full inquiry on this, which, you know, proportionately, politically contributed to, and that can compel people to come and give evidence with the full scale of all public sector information, you know, essentially on its hand. I don't think there's anything shameful about that whatsoever. It's an appropriate response. And a part of that £65 million, a great deal of it, is important to protect and make sure the victims are supported.
Do you trust the Labour government with their inquiry to get to the bottom of all of this, Youssef?
Well, Keir Starmer and the Labour government have been dragged kicking and screaming into some semblance into an inquiry after decades of cover-ups, institutional cover-ups of the gang rape, sadly, of British girls by largely Pakistani men. And it's an absolute disgrace. I think this inquiry may well result in increased pressure on Labour, which is still, as Charlie just mentioned, to the degree there is an inquiry, which they were dragged kicking and screaming into, it is highly localised. But listen, the only way we're going to get truly to the bottom of this is an inquiry that is national, no stone unturned, and one which is statutory, so that it can compel witnesses to present themselves to the committee. And it's not just, of course,
so you support the inquiry
the barbarians
set up.
Yeah, but it's obviously not enough, because it's still highly localised. And that's the point Charlie was making. We need an absolutely no stone unturned inquiry that also focuses not only on the barbarians who committed these unspeakable crimes, but also the members of the police, sadly, members of the council, members of the social worker teams, who were not just knew about these crimes, but frankly were engaging in the crimes alongside the barbarians.
Do you support him having an independent inquiry?
We support anything that will shine a brighter light, shine a bright disinfecting light on these atrocious crimes.
So you support the Labour government's inquiry as well?
To the degree that it exists, but it is not national.
And you recognise the Home Secretary has said we are going to not shy away
it is nowhere near serious enough. Which is why, by the way, Jess Phillips has come under so much pressure. Jess Phillips has come under so much pressure from victims themselves because of all of the gaslighting.
I'm sure Rupert Lowe will be pleased to hear that you're supporting his inquiry, and the Labour government will be too.
We support
David, he's just told you that. He supports getting to the bottom of it, whoever's in charge of it. David says, Michelle, please can we stop calling it grooming gangs? These are not grooming gangs. These are rape and torture gangs. Yes, David, they are. And don't you worry, you can be assured that we, on this channel, we're not going anywhere when it comes to that topic. I can promise you that. But for now, gents, thank you. Thank you to all of you at home. Have a great night. I'll see you tomorrow night.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Evening. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Rain is returning to southwest England, and more wet weather to come across the northeast as well, with some snow mixed in here. Most places feeling a bit colder tomorrow compared to today. Low pressure systems continue to grow down to the southwest, being blocked from moving by a big area of high pressure. So the weather's kind of stuck in this rut. A further pulse of rain coming into the southwest, where the ground is very, very wet. So extra rain is likely to cause some flooding problems, even though it's not particularly heavy. Staying wet in northeast Scotland as well, and the snow level coming down here. Most places avoiding frost with a lot of cloud and a fairly brisk wind, which will bring a real chill tomorrow. As the air gets colder, that snow coming down to lower levels over eastern Scotland, maybe rain on the coast, but you won't have to come too far to see some snow. The rain easing perhaps in Cornwall, but more wet weather to come for Dorset, Somerset and Devon. Met Office warning remains in place here. That rain extending across Wales, but Northern Ireland, much of Northern England's dry and drab. Some brightness in western Scotland, but the snow warning in place across the northeast. To say that snow coming down increasingly to lower and lower levels. So we may see rain on the coast, but the snow elsewhere could cause some disruption as it builds up through the day, particularly, but not exclusively, on the higher routes. The rain will edge northwards, covering the Midlands, East Anglia by the time we get into the afternoon, and most of Wales. Cold day with that rain over the Midlands and East Anglia, 4 or 5 degrees with that wind continuing to feed in the cloud. And as things turn colder, the wet weather moves northwards. We'll see a bit more snow on Wednesday. Again, mostly over the hills, but some at lower levels possible for a time over northern England and Scotland. Warning in place for Shetland through Wednesday as well. Elsewhere further south, looks a bit brighter across southern parts of England and Wales on Wednesday, and a bit milder here as well, but further north, staying on the chilly side throughout.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Thank you for making us Britain's #1 news channel. Together, we have built something truly extraordinary.